Ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Britt here, back again with another video. And over my shoulder you are looking at the most decorated battleship from World War II, the USS North Carolina, the mighty USS North Carolina. We are here in Wilmington, North Carolina today. We are going to make a video on this ship. Today we're not going to go below decks on this vessel. That would just take way too much time. So I'll tell you, if you've never been on one of these World War II era battleships, aircraft carriers, or destroyers that we have in America, man, if you ever find yourself where they have one, don't hesitate to go on board and spend a few hours, because it's time well spent. You know, a lot of history on these vessels, and there's plenty scattered around the country. We got a couple in California, we got the USS Texas, we got the USS Alabama, and just south of us in Charleston, South Carolina, we have the aircraft carrier, the USS Yorktown, and we also have the destroyer, the USS Laffey. And I'll tell you, if you don't know the story of the USS Laffey, man, drop what you're doing, phone the neighbors, wake the kids. That's a story no one should miss, man. I'll tell you what that ship went through, and the fact that she did not sink is nothing short of a miracle. So incredible story there. And man, and especially if you consider the time frame when these ships were built, 85, 90. In the case of the USS Texas, she was launched in 1912. So over 100 years ago, the technology that they had back then to build vessels like this is just, man, it's incredible. So today what we're going to do, we are going to talk about the Japanese submarine, the I-19, and why that salvo of 6 torpedoes that she fired, maybe the most famous salvo ever fired in submarine history. So she did a lot of damage that day. We will go on the stern of the ship. We will talk about the Kingfisher planes, the Kingfisher rescues. We will talk about her battle awards and her ribbons. We will talk about the friendly fire incident that happened on this ship. Of course, we're going to talk about the weaponry. I mean, look at those guns. Those 16-inch guns right there. There's 6 of them, and they are truly fantastic. We got 6 16-inch guns on the bow here, and we got 3 more on the stern. So let me turn this around. Yeah, those are quite incredible, and each one of those guns has enough power to launch a Toyota Corolla about 20 miles. So man, I don't know what you're watching this on, but standing here looking at this, being this close to it, God, it's incredible. So and before this video ends, we are going to pay our respects to the 10 servicemen who made the ultimate sacrifice and lost their lives serving our country on this ship. So that is the USS North Carolina right there. And like I was telling you, we're lucky here. We're surrounded by these ships. Just up the coast in Norfolk, we have the USS Wisconsin, and then not too far up the coast from that, we have the Big J, the Black Dragon, the mighty USS New Jersey. The USS New Jersey is the most decorated battleship of all time. So without further ado, let's get over to the port side, and we will talk about the submarine, the I-19, and the salvo of 6 torpedoes that she fired that day that did so much damage. All right, let's get into it. All right, we've moved over to the port side of the battleship North Carolina. It's a bit windy out here, so I got the windsock on. I hope that this turns out okay. There's some blowing wind pretty good. But I want to give you a shot of the anchor real quick and the anchor housing. Man, I'll tell you what, you don't get a sense of how big that is until you're standing here. And I'll put a couple of pictures in here real quick. But and that thing is gigantic. I mean, that anchor weighs almost 26,000 pounds. So that anchor's no joke. It's huge. So, and the battleship North Carolina, BB 55. BB just stands for battleship, and 55 is the number. She was the 55th battleship that was built. And this ramp here, they just use this ramp to get equipment on and off the ship as needed. All right, now the Japanese submarine, the I-19. let's talk about her a little bit. On September 15, 1942, Japanese submarine, the I-19, found the USS aircraft carrier, the Wasp, in her crosshairs. And I'm going to put a diagram of the area from that day, so you can see where all the ships were in relation to the I-19 and in relation to the aircraft carrier, the Wasp. Had quite a few ships in the area that day. I believe there was a couple of task forces in the area. There was another aircraft carrier close by. So the major players that we're going to talk about today are going to be, of course, the I-19, the Wasp. We're going to talk about the destroyers, the O'Brien, the Lansdowne, and the Mustin, and of course this ship right here, the Battleship North Carolina. So the I-19, at a range of about 2,000 yards, fired a spread of 6 torpedoes at the USS Wasp. 3 torpedoes hit the Wasp on her starboard side, causing a fire that quickly began to burn out of control. And that torpedo, 2 torpedoes missed the Wasp across her bow. 1 torpedo missed the Wasp across her stern. So the torpedo that missed the Wasp across her stern, actually at about 5,000 yards, that torpedo passed the destroyer, the Lansdowne, and the Lansdowne saw the torpedo. They, of course, made radio messages. At a range of about 10,000 yards, that same torpedo passed the destroyer, the Mustin, barely missed her. Of course, she made radio messages too. Everyone in the area knew that there were torpedoes in the water. They could see the Wasp on fire. They knew she had been hit, so they knew there were active torpedoes in the water. So at a range of about 12,000 yards, the North Carolina tried to take an evasive action, made a hard turn to her port side when the torpedo from the I-19 slammed into her right here, right below gun turret number 1. So right around in here is where that torpedo slammed into the port side of the North Carolina. The ensuing explosion killed 5 men, blew an 18-foot by 32-foot hole into the port side. Of course, flooding ensued. The crew of the North Carolina was fast to act and shored up the flooding as quick as they could. They actually flooded tanks on the starboard side to help the lift of the ship, and they were able to maintain full power and go to Pearl Harbor for repairs. So that was the torpedo that passed the Wasp across her stern. Now we got the 2 torpedoes. Let me turn this around. Now we got the 2 torpedoes that passed the Wasp across her bow. So one of those torpedoes actually ran until it ran out of fuel. It didn't hit anything. The other torpedo, at about 11,000 yards, slammed into the port side of the destroyer, the O'Brien. And there's a real famous picture of the O'Brien exploding as the torpedo slammed into her port side. So it's an incredible picture. And you can see the USS Wasp burning in the distance. The destroyers in the area, they dropped about 80 depth charges trying to sink the I-19, but they couldn't do it. The I-19 got away. The crew of the Wasp tried as hard as they could to save that ship, but the fire was out of control. They couldn't save it. So later in the day, they had to abandon ship. The Lansdowne, the destroyer of the Lansdowne, pulled up beside, well, close to the Wasp, and placed a few torpedoes into her, and they effectively scuttled the ship. The O'Brien, although she didn't sink that day, she did sink a few days later, a couple of weeks later or so, due to structural damage as a direct result of that torpedo. So, the end result of the I-19 incident is a destroyer was lost, an aircraft carrier was lost, and there was significant damage done to this ship right here. So that was a pretty effective day for the I-19. So was that the most effective spray of 6 torpedoes ever fired by a submarine? And it might be. I can't think of one that was worse than that. So the I-19 did get away that day, but a little over a year later, in November of 1943, the destroyer, the Radford, caught up with the I-19 and was successful in dropping some depth charges on her, and the Radford effectively put an end to the I-19. But she did a lot of damage to the fleet that day. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go onto the battleship. Look at those 16-inch guns. I mean, they're incredible, man. I mean, you got to come here to see this. We're going to go onto the stern. We are going to talk about the Kingfisher planes. We're going to talk about their triumphs, and we're going to talk about their tragedy. All right, stay tuned. Got some good stuff coming. All right, on the stern of the North Carolina here, you're looking at the Kingfisher plane here. On April 30th, 1944, the North Carolina was protecting aircraft carriers off the island of Truk while pilots were assaulting Japanese encampments on that island. On that morning, the Kingfishers were assigned rescue duty. One Kingfisher flew into the Truk Lagoon to rescue a pilot that had been downed. In that process, rough seas capsized that plane. Second Kingfisher came in, made the rescue of all 3 men, and took them to the USS Tang, a submarine. Unloaded the men there, and then went back to look for more men that had been downed. In the process, they eventually wound up rescuing about 10 more men, and there's a real famous picture of the Kingfisher just loaded down with men drifting in the ocean. I think they had like 10 or 11 men on that plane, and actually pulling a couple in life rafts that were behind the plane. So what they did was they taxied for I believe about 20 miles back to the USS Tang. Took them hours and hours to get there, and when they got there, the Kingfisher had been so badly damaged from the time taxiing out in the rough seas that she had to be scuttled. Guns from the USS Tang fired rounds into the Kingfisher, sank her, and there's a picture of her actually burning. So I'll try to include that. But yeah, I'll put that in this video here. But beautiful plane, beautiful plane. On April 6, 1945, tragedy did strike on the North Carolina when during a recovery operation where one of the Kingfishers was being brought back on to the battleship, the Kingfisher capsized, and serviceman Eldon Means was lost at sea. His body was never recovered, and that was a tragic day for the North Carolina and her Kingfishers. All right, the actual story of this plane is, in August of 1942, this plane actually crashed into Mount Buxton in Western Canada. The crew survived. The wreckage remained there for like 21 years until 1963, when it was salvaged. The Canadian authorities donated it to the USS North Carolina. USS North Carolina sent the plane to Dallas, Texas to be refurbished and restored. And after a year of working on the plane, this is what you see right here. They did a beautiful job on it. And in June of 1971, the plane was placed on the deck here on the fantail of the USS North Carolina. And beautiful plane. They did a great job. All right, we have moved up a deck here on the North Carolina. And what you're looking at there is the Portside Director. What's called Sky 2. It's the control for the 5-inch guns. And on the day of April the 6th, 1945, I'm going to zoom up a little bit on it here so you can see it. On April 6th, 1945, the North Carolina and many other ships, 12 destroyers, a large attack group was fighting off the coast of Okinawa during a frenzied kamikaze attack A low-flying Kamikaze flew across the North Carolina from her port side to her starboard side and actually crashed into the ocean on her starboard side. As that was happening, one of the other ships in the area didn't stop firing at the Kamikaze in time, and the result was a 5-inch 38 caliber shell hitting that SkyDirector right behind me. 3 men were killed, 44 were wounded as the friendly fire incident that happened on this ship on April the 6th, 1945. And there's a really good picture I'm gonna put in here of the damage done to the SkyDirector here. So that was a friendly fire incident on the USS North Carolina. We're gonna talk a little bit about the weaponry. Gonna go down on the main deck, look at some of her weaponry, and then we'll wrap this video up. Awesome. And as we make our way down to the main deck, I will put a couple of links in the description to some great Kamikaze footage, and I'll also put a link in the description for the damage done to the North Carolina by the torpedo from the I-19. It's the best damage report that you'll ever see, so make sure to look for that. All right, awesome. All right, about the North Carolina's weaponry. The North Carolina was equipped with 9 16-inch 45 caliber guns, 20 5-inch 38 caliber guns, 60 40 millimeter guns, which is what we're looking at right now. And she had the 20 millimeter guns varied from between 36 to 53. And we're approaching one of the 40 millimeter guns right now, to which the North Carolina had 20 of these. So, I mean, that's quite impressive. Uh-oh, almost fell. It's dangerous on the deck of the North Carolina. So, that's a beautiful weapon right there. Quite impressive. So, and I will get a still shot of the specs on this weapon and include it so you can pause it and take a read. Quite interesting. Nice weapon. All right, we're approaching one of the 20 millimeter guns that the North Carolina has. And like I said, 20 millimeter guns varied between 36 to 53 on this ship. So that's a nice weapon. And again, I'll include a still shot with the specs so you can read all about it. Very nice. All right, this is the 5-inch 38 caliber weapon on the USS North Carolina. They have 5 pods of these on the port side and 5 pods on the starboard side. 20 guns, 25-inch guns on the ship, and this is the 5-inch gun that caused a friendly fire incident from a neighboring ship. So yes, it put a shell in the Port 5 Sky Tower up there. So I'll put a still picture in there so you can read all the specs about it. It's quite an incredible weapon for sure. All right, there's the North Carolina's decorations. I will put a still picture here so you can read all about them. Pretty spectacular right there. The most decorated battleship from World War II, ladies and gentlemen, the USS North Carolina. She's a wonderful, wonderful battleship. So if you're ever in Wilmington, North Carolina, do not hesitate to come on board. I guarantee you that you will enjoy it. All right, we're approaching turret number 1, and man, I'll tell you what, you just don't get a sense of how big that is. And I'll put a couple of pictures in here of how, I mean, that is, it's gigantic. It's absolutely gigantic. So yeah, that's incredible how big that thing is. And this big box out on the side here that sticks out from it. Let me swing around and get a shot from the front. You can see in there, it's for an, might be able to see in there. It's for an optical sensor. Helps with range finding. So yeah, this thing is monstrous big. I mean, it's just gigantic. And there's the 16-inch guns. Each one of those gun barrels weighs 96 tons. I mean, they're just massive, just absolutely massive. 96 tons per barrel. Fire a projectile that's 2,700 pounds. Takes 6 bags of gunpowder, each weighing 90 pounds, to fire a projectile out of these guns. Let me back up and get a good shot here. The range on them is about 21 miles. And when they leave the barrel, they're going about 1,500 miles per hour. Just incredible, absolutely incredible. And there's the 16-inch guns on the stern. I'm stepping over the deck chain here. Just monstrous big. I mean, it's just, they're huge. Quite impressive. That's worth the price of admission alone right there. Incredible, incredible. So, and speaking of the deck chain, here's the deck chain right here for the anchors. Each link weighs 80 pounds. And here's the starboard anchor up here. Of course, we're on the bow of the North Carolina. And I tell you, man, walking across this ship, you're walking uphill. From those gun turrets to here, you are walking uphill. That's exercise. So let me turn around and get a shot of the ship here. And there she is. A little bit windy out here again today. Hope you can hear me all right. And I believe that's gonna just about do it for my video on the North Carolina. So I hope you enjoyed watching, maybe learned something today. And who knows? I mean, there's so much to this ship that, you know, you just don't have time to put in a video. There's so many amazing things below deck that are incredible. Absolutely incredible. So you know, I may do a series of videos below decks. We'll just have to wait and see. I got a big trip coming up with some good stuff for you. I'm going to close this video. I'm going to put the names of the 10 men who lost their lives on this ship serving our country. So take a few more seconds and watch those. A couple of quick thank yous here. I'd like to say thank you to my friend Amy Fulford for her help in this video. I'd like to say thank you to my girlfriend Bridget. Thank you so much. And also to my son Tommy. Thank you so much, Tommy, for coming out here with me so many times. Love you, buddy. And we'll see you guys on the next video. All right.